Some of the loudest cries for help are completely silent. They do not arrive as screams or sudden collapses. They move quietly through everyday actions, through habits that often go unnoticed, and sometimes through behaviors we even admire. When the mind is under strain, it does not always announce itself with obvious pain. Often, it adapts. It learns to survive by becoming efficient, pleasant, reliable, or invisible. Today, we are looking at the behaviors that appear normal on the surface, yet beneath that surface can be signals of a mind carrying more weight than it can comfortably hold. First, there is always being the strong one. We all recognize this person, the steady presence, the one who organizes, supports, listens, fixes, and endures. They are the rock when others feel unstable. They rarely complain, they rarely ask, they rarely pause long enough to notice their own exhaustion. But the one who never asks for help may be the one who needs it most. Many people navigating high-functioning depression or anxiety work tirelessly to appear fine. They perform wellness with great discipline. They smile easily. They crack jokes at the right moments. They carry other people's burdens as if that is their natural role. This pattern is sometimes described as smiling depression, a state where a person looks light and capable to the outside world while quietly suffering within. Inside, there is not just fatigue, but depletion. Emotional reserves run dry, the body moves forward, but the spirit feels thin. Mental health organizations note that withdrawal from friends and activities can occur even while someone maintains a strong exterior. So being the strong one is not always a personality trait. Sometimes it is a strategy, a carefully constructed mask designed to keep the world calm while the inner ground feels unstable. Next comes the habit of constantly apologizing. You recognize this too. The person who says sorry for speaking, sorry for standing in the way, sorry for existing too loudly or too quietly, sorry for things that have nothing to do with them. This behavior often grows from trauma, from chronic self-blame, or from anxiety that turns every interaction into a silent evaluation. For some, it traces back to environments where mistakes were punished or affection was conditional. What sounds like politeness is often fear in a gentle disguise. Fear of being a burden, fear of causing discomfort, fear of taking up space. Extreme and persistent guilt is widely recognized as a common indicator of mental distress. Over time, these repeated apologies become messages sent inward. I am in the way. I must earn my presence. I do not naturally belong. Therapeutic practices like cognitive behavioral therapy help people learn to observe and soften these internal narratives, to question whether the apology is truly necessary or simply a reflex born from old wounds. Then there is the quiet disappearance of interest. Everyone loses motivation occasionally. Energy fluctuates, seasons change. But when enjoyment fades from everything, something deeper may be unfolding. Food loses its appeal. Conversations feel heavy. Activities that once brought warmth now feel distant. The world does not feel hostile, just colorless. This experience is known clinically as anhedonia. It is not laziness. It is not a lack of discipline. It is the nervous system struggling to register pleasure, connection, or meaning. Medical research confirms that withdrawal from friends and once-loved activities is a core symptom of depressive disorders. Life begins to feel like it is being observed from behind glass. The encouraging truth is that the brain is adaptable. Emerging treatments focus on restoring disrupted reward pathways, helping the nervous system remember how to respond to joy. Healing does not always mean forcing happiness. Sometimes it begins by gently restoring the conditions in which feeling becomes possible again. Perfectionism is another behavior that often hides in plain sight. From the outside, it looks impressive. Immaculate work, structured schedules, controlled environments. But beneath this polished surface, there is often anxiety moving quickly and quietly. Psychologically, perfectionism is driven less by a love of excellence and more by fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of losing control in an unpredictable world. It becomes an attempt to manage uncertainty by eliminating error. The pressure to perform flawlessly leads to constant self-monitoring, over-preparation, and last-minute stress. Over time, this state erodes resilience and pushes the nervous system toward burnout. What looks like ambition may actually be survival, a way of staying safe by never allowing rest. One of the most underestimated warning signs of mental strain is this relentless internal demand to be better, cleaner, faster, and more controlled than what is humanly sustainable. When that pressure can no longer stay contained, it often leaks out as irritability. Some people experiencing depression do not appear sad. They do not withdraw into silence or tears. Instead, they become sharp, easily frustrated, overwhelmed by small inconveniences. This pattern is particularly common among men and adolescents, where emotional pain is redirected outward. Irritability as a primary symptom is associated with greater severity of depression and heightened anxiety, and it carries serious risks when left unaddressed. Anger, in this context, is often sadness that has nowhere safe to land. It is grief with no language, a nervous system stretched too tightly, reacting before reflection can intervene. When even that energy fades, withdrawal often follows. Canceling plans once in a while is part of life, but a consistent pattern of pulling away from people and activities signals something deeper. This is not simply introversion. It can be an early sign of social anxiety, burnout, or emotional numbness. People rarely withdraw because they no longer care. More often, they withdraw because caring has become too painful or too exhausting. In a world that demands constant responsiveness, retreat becomes a form of protection. Digital connection can complicate this pattern. Excessive social media use often replaces meaningful interaction with surface-level engagement, increasing loneliness while giving the illusion of connection. The retreat is not rejection, it is defense. As the mind continues to carry this load, even simple decisions can feel overwhelming. Choosing what to eat, what to wear, where to go. These choices can trigger loops of doubt and second-guessing. What if this is wrong? What if someone is disappointed? This experience is known as decision fatigue. The mental resources normally used for small choices have been consumed by internal struggle. The nervous system is tired of scanning, evaluating, and protecting. What appears as indecision is often exhaustion. The neat desk, the sharp tone, the silence, the difficulty choosing. These are not isolated flaws, they are signals. They are the language of a system under sustained pressure. Recognizing these patterns is not about labeling or diagnosing. It is about seeing more clearly. It is about looking past behavior and noticing the person underneath. Often, the most intense battles are fought quietly, without witnesses or acknowledgement. There is also the use of humor as armor. We all know someone who can find a joke in anything. Laughter fills the room when they arrive. Humor connects us. It lightens heavy moments. But when humor becomes the only response, especially to pain, it may serve another function. Psychologists describe the sad clown paradox, where comedy is used to mask internal distress. This style of humor deflects difficult questions, avoids vulnerability, maintains emotional distance, and conceals wounds. It is the practiced smile paired with the phrase, "I'm fine." Long-term studies show that self-defeating humor can increase loneliness and depressive symptoms over time. What offers temporary relief can slowly deepen isolation. Sometimes the person making everyone laugh is carrying the greatest sense of loneliness. Just as humor can shield pain that already exists, another pattern prepares for pain that is expected. This is catastrophizing. It is more than pessimism. It is a cognitive pattern where the mind consistently anticipates the worst possible outcome. This behavior is closely associated with anxiety disorders, trauma responses, and chronic stress. When someone has been hurt repeatedly, the nervous system learns to stay alert. It scans for danger, preparing for impact. This is not negativity for its own sake. It is survival that has not yet learned it is safe to rest. Certain personality traits can make this pattern more likely, but the core mechanism is the same. The mind stays braced, unable to power down. The people around us, the ones we think we know, and sometimes the reflection we see ourselves, all carry layers unseen. Recognizing these behaviors is not about judgment. It is about attention. It is about understanding that beneath every mask is a story still unfolding. If someone came to mind as you listened, a simple message of connection can matter more than you realize. Strong social support has been shown to soften the effects of anxiety-driven thinking. And if these patterns felt familiar within you, that recognition itself is meaningful. Asking for support is not weakness. It is acknowledgement. It is acknowledgement that you are human, that you live within a nervous system shaped by experience, and that no one is meant to carry everything alone. When we begin to understand these behaviors not as flaws but as adaptations, something softens inside us. We stop asking what is wrong with this person or with ourselves, and begin asking what has been carried for too long without rest. There is a subtle pattern that ties all of these behaviors together. They are not random, they are intelligent responses to prolonged internal pressure. The mind learns to cope in the ways it can. It becomes strong when weakness feels unsafe. It becomes apologetic when space once felt dangerous. It lets go of pleasure when disappointment has been repeated too often. It seeks control when uncertainty feels overwhelming. It redirects sadness into anger when grief has no permission to speak. It withdraws when connection feels costly. It jokes when honesty feels too exposed. It prepares for disaster when history has taught it that safety is temporary. None of this happens overnight. These patterns form slowly, layer by layer, often without conscious choice. They become habits, then identities. People begin to say, "This is just how I am." But these behaviors are not who a person is. They are what a person learned to do in order to survive a particular set of conditions. And what is learned can be observed. What is observed can be softened. What is softened can begin to change. When someone is always the strong one, it is often because vulnerability once came with consequences. Strength became armor. Over time, the armor grows heavy. The body may still stand tall, but inside there is longing. Longing to rest. Longing to be held. Longing to not be responsible for everyone else's emotional balance. Strength without support eventually turns into isolation. Real resilience is not the absence of need. It is the ability to recognize need and respond with care. Chronic apologizing tells a similar story. It reflects a nervous system that learned early to scan for displeasure. The apology becomes a preemptive strike against rejection. It says, "I see your potential anger before you do, and I am already trying to make it smaller." Over time, this pattern shrinks a person's sense of worth. The work of healing here is not about becoming rude or careless. It is about relearning that presence does not require permission, that existing does not need justification. The loss of interest, the fading of joy, is perhaps one of the most painful experiences because it robs life of its texture. People often blame themselves for this state. They push harder, they try to feel. But numbness is not resolved through force. It is resolved through safety, through steady routines, through gentle reconnection, through addressing the underlying exhaustion of the nervous system. Joy returns not when demanded, but when conditions allow. Perfectionism continues to be praised in many cultures, which makes it especially difficult to recognize as a warning sign. The perfectionist often receives approval, promotion, admiration. Yet internally, the cost is constant vigilance. The body never stands down. Rest feels undeserved. Mistakes feel catastrophic. Healing perfectionism is not about lowering standards. It is about loosening the belief that worth is conditional, that love must be earned through flawless performance. Irritability, when understood correctly, becomes a message rather than a moral failing. It signals overload. It says something inside is asking for relief. When this signal is ignored or punished, it intensifies. When it is met with curiosity and compassion, it can soften. Emotional literacy is a skill, not a trait. Many people were never taught how to identify sadness, fear, or grief in themselves. Anger becomes the default language because it is the only one that feels permitted. Withdrawal, too, deserves careful understanding. Social connection is nourishing, but only when it feels safe. When the inner world is chaotic, even friendly interactions can feel draining. The mind pulls back to conserve energy. The task is not to force connection, but to rebuild capacity. Small, low-pressure moments of presence. One conversation, one walk, one shared silence. Connection is restored gradually, not all at once. Decision fatigue reminds us that mental energy is finite. When too much of it is spent on survival, little remains for choice. This is why compassion is essential. What looks like indecision is often a sign of depletion. Support here does not come from pushing harder, but from simplifying, from reducing unnecessary demands, from restoring rest. Humor, when used skillfully, is beautiful, but when it becomes a shield, it can prevent intimacy. Laughing through pain keeps others entertained but leaves the inner world untouched. Learning when to set the joke down is an act of courage. It allows real connection to form. It allows someone to be seen not as a performer, but as a person. Catastrophic thinking keeps the nervous system on constant alert. It imagines danger as a way of feeling prepared. The irony is that this preparation exhausts the body and mind. Gently questioning these thoughts, grounding in the present moment, and building a sense of safety over time can help the system relearn that not every situation is a threat. This is not about positive thinking. It is about realistic thinking, anchored in the now. All of these patterns ask for the same response: attention without judgment, curiosity instead of criticism, compassion rather than dismissal. When we notice these behaviors in others, we are given an opportunity not to fix, but to witness, a message, a check-in, an invitation to talk without pressure. These small gestures matter. Research consistently shows that feeling seen and supported can buffer against the progression of mental distress. And when we recognize these signs in ourselves, the invitation is the same: to pause, to listen, to seek support without shame. Asking for help is not a failure of strength. It is a recognition of reality. No one develops resilience alone. Even the most disciplined mind requires connection. If you found yourself reflected in these patterns, know that awareness is the first step toward change. You are not broken. You are responding to life as it has been. And responses can evolve. Support exists. Healing is not instant, but it is possible. If this exploration resonated with you, continue learning, continue observing, continue cultivating compassion for yourself and others. And remember, compassion can save lives, sometimes long before medicine.